Hey, good day, folks. Welcome back to Beyond the Seven, live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Aaron Dovid Poston. He's been teaching us the beautiful series, The 48 Ways to Wisdom. It's been such a joy so far. We finished 10 parts. It's been huge, and I encourage everybody to get back there and check out every episode. There's so much in this class. It keeps building and building and building and building and building and building. And who better to share it with us than a learned rabbi in Jerusalem? So let's just tune right in and see how Rabbi Poston's doing today. I know it's getting late there, Rabbi Poston, and we are so grateful you take the time to share Torah with the nations of this world.
Thank you, Dan. Shavua Tov. I'm so glad to be back. I'm glad that you do host us and host me and everything that Yibana stands for. And today we're going to be dealing with the number 11 of the 48 Ways to Wisdom. So just to reiterate, to just go back on the idea of the 48 Ways to Wisdom, when the Israelites left Egypt, right, it took 50 days till we reached the revelation at Mount Sinai, till we received the Torah, so to speak, right, the covenant, we entered the covenant with Hashem. And on this process, right, the journey of 49 days till we arrived, there are these 48 ways. I know you say, so you have to ask why there's 49, there's 48. So the 49th, the unwritten way is to review. Okay, so you have to really, what's the word? Concretize everything that you've learned. So basically, the Israelites went on a journey in order to receive the truth. And in order to receive the Torah, they had to be ready. So the truth is, this is a lesson for all of us, for all time, and anyone who is interested in, let's just say, the journey towards gaining wisdom and incorporating wisdom into their life will only gain from understanding these ways. These are, as the Torah itself is a manuscript, is a manual for living. It's instruction manual for living. Now, it is very deep. I don't have to explain. I mean, I think that most people who are watching the show or watching this video understand how the Torah is basically, we're talking about like the wisdom of God, God's mind. So in order to be able to receive this, one has to make themselves into a vessel. So it's about working on your character. Obviously, we discuss many of these ideas. And tonight, Dikduk Chaverim, right? What does that mean? Examining ideas with friends. One of the ways to, and this is really so apropos for today's world, with all of the different, we call maklokas, arguments that people could have, it's not about winning an argument. It's about how you play the game, right? It's not about who wins or who loses. Because if your goal is to get to truth, then everyone's a winner, right? If two people are trying to argue their points, well, are they trying to win? Are they trying to convince the other person they're right? So there's something wrong with that when we discuss what the whole idea is to get to the truth, which means you may have to admit that you have been you made a mistake. Now, how do you present your arguments, and how do you listen to the other side is what we're going to basically discuss. Rav Noach Weinberg, the Rosh Yeshiva of Eish Torah, passed away a few years ago. Actually, it's 12 years ago. Just a few days ago was the 12th anniversary of his passing on to the next world. And he's the one who put together, let's say, the modern day seminar to try to get these ideas across. But this is ancient Jewish wisdom, goes back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the part of the oral Torah. And Jews believe that this information was already given at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai. So this is very valuable. So I applaud you, whoever is listening, that they joined us, that they're interested in these ideas. So what does it mean, Dikduk Chaverim? Dikduk means to be precise or to be analytical. Like I said, this is translated as examining ideas with friends. Again, the main idea behind it, why would you examine any idea, is because you want to hopefully find out if it's true, and if it's true, then incorporate it into your life. So one of the ideas is to try to find out how true it is. The second thing is it says with friends, meaning one of the ideas we spoke about in the last two courses was a famous expression by the rabbis. I have learned so much, right, from my teachers. Obviously, I learned a lot from my teachers. What else are they there for? To teach us. But I even learned more from my colleagues. And who did I learn the most from? My students. So how is it that one could actually gain so much from their students? First of all, to be honest, right? When you don't know, you don't know. And then you go back and you examine. Hopefully your students are the ones that ask the most questions, or the unexpected questions, right? If your colleagues or even your rebbeim, they're going to ask you questions. They already know the answers. But when someone's asking you a sincere question, I think as a teacher or as a friend, it only begs you to examine what it is that you're trying to convey to the other person. So the main idea Rav Noach expressed in this idea is putting your wisdom on the marketplace, right? I mean, we grew up, I'm saying, I don't know, most people, let's say, I have no idea who's watching, but let's say most people in the West, they grew up with, let's say, capitalistic or, the
Target.
free market, right? So what is going to succeed? The better product, right? So it's very interesting that when it comes to Judaism, there are laws, obviously, but there are particular laws about opening up a similar type of business in a small town where there already is an existing business like that. And you would be restricted. It would be forbidden to take away someone else's parnasa, someone else's welfare, right? Their welfare is dependent on their business. And if you open a competing business where it's a small town, there are restrictions. You may not be allowed to open exactly the same type. You have to make a change, sell something a little different, or provide a little bit of a different service. But if it's a larger town, of course, the free market system works and there's enough business for everybody. It's not a problem. It's not called stealing. Otherwise, it's stealing. Yeah. However, when it comes to a school, when it comes to wisdom, that's an exception. So even if there's enough kids, or let's say students, enough for just one school, there's an exception. You're still allowed to open another school. And why is that? Because there's a concept that says that the jealousy amongst these teachers, amongst the rabbis, will actually only increase wisdom. In other words, you must come up with a better product, whether it means more truth, right? Or more evidence for whatever it is you're trying to convey. Maybe you yourself, the teacher, is more charismatic. Whatever it is, tough luck to the other guy. He would have to improve in order to stay in the game, right? And that's good when it comes to wisdom. Okay, so basically it's putting your wisdom on the marketplace. Now, who are you going to do that with? Obviously, someone you can trust. That's why it's talking about a friend. What do I mean, someone you can trust? Someone who's looking for the truth, right? Not someone that has an agenda, who has already made his decision, their decision, and there's nothing you could say to them that will convince them. There's no point. It's just a total waste of time, right? But if you have two people, hopefully they're friends, and they're both on the same page, so to speak, they're both looking for the truth, then what they can do is use each other, to be critical or critique their own argument. When you say, this is what I believe, here's the evidence, this is why I believe it, this is why I don't believe the other stuff. The other person, who is your friend, he's not out to kill you, he's not out to bury you, he's not out to make you minced meat, but he's also looking for the truth. So there's no reason why you can't reason together. Okay, so the best thing, of course, is to ask questions. I know this is one of the things that turned me on to Judaism. I wasn't religious my whole life, but the type of questions, the honesty behind the questions, and the honesty, of course, from the ones giving the answers, was a big turn on for me, because Other places, you're either totally discouraged for asking questions, or totally belittled, or made to feel, I don't even want to go into what kind of feelings they want to convey to you for even posing such a question. But the next part of the I call civil discussion is you really want to ask the person how they came to their conclusions. What is their evidence, right? If you're at odds with the other person, so if you can begin to say, look, if I could show you the evidence, or you can show me the evidence, I'm willing to change my mind, or are you willing to change your mind? And one of the greatest ways of learning in Judaism has always been, it's called a chavruta system, where you really focus just one other person and battle out the ideas. And I say really battle them out. Now, the problem is we're all human beings. We all have an ego, okay? So at times, and I've learned with chavrusas for many years, and some of them till this day are my best friends. You get your emotions and you invest a certain amount into the argument. And there is a problem with cognitive dissonance, where we've already made this conclusion and we're not willing to see the other side. But the other person, hopefully your friend, will remind you, we're here to look for the truth, right? Go home, think about it, digest it, speak it out with other wise, balanced individuals, and see if where you might be making a mistake in your analysis.
Wow.
So, of course, we all know, I shouldn't say we all know, I keep saying that, but for those who are not aware, those who are aware, there are a famous pair of rabbis, and that would be Shammai and Hillel. And the truth be told, even though we determine the law most of the time, almost 99.9% of the time, like Hillel, Shammai was actually attributed to being smarter and probably maybe even more correct. However, we go like Hillel. And what is the reason we're going to go like Hillel? Hillel always wanted to hear the other side first. And he would repeat back, is this what I hear you saying? Just to get it straight. So throughout all the halachas, all throughout the Shas, in the Talmud and the Mishnahs, right? Everywhere you see them having any discussion, Shammai's point is always the first mentioned. And that is because Rebbe, who comes from Hillel, he's the one who codified the Mishnah, the Oral Torah, and he went along that same tradition. So how would it be? You want to be heard? Well, you have to also, right? Part of a discussion is listening. We already discussed that in an earlier class as well. So you want to make sure the other person you want to let them know and assure them that you're listening to them, you're hearing them, and then you can repeat back. Even if you disagree, at least hear them out. Now, I do want to say something about conspiracy theories. It's a very interesting dilemma that we're on.
Field. You could get lost in it.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull this up because this was something I pulled off the internet. Judaism has a lot to say about these, I'll call them conspiracy theories. There really is no such thing as a conspiracy theory that will take off and that will continue if it didn't have some essence of truth. If it has zero truth, it really never gets off the ground.
No legs.
So in mysticism, we call this world Alma Desveka, which means a world of doubt. It's also called Alma Deshikra, a world of falsehood. But going back to this idea, Alma Desveka, it means a world of doubt. What is a world of doubt? Where there's a confusing mixture of both good and bad, of truth and false. So the fact that there's already, even the tree in the Garden of Eden was called a tree of knowledge of good and evil. So when we're confronted with people who And I don't think that a majority of the people that have an inclination to investigate, I'm going to use that word, I don't think they fully believe. Obviously, there are those that will fully believe, but most people will hear some conspiracy theory and they will likely, hopefully, investigate. At some point, they turn around and say, well, this is hogwash. The whole thing is baloney. But the truth is that it's usually not. It's usually not entirely baloney. And that is where we're, now I have a couple of friends that have really been upset. I'm saying it very lightly about all these conspiracy theories that are taking off on social media. And one of the things I want to mention, I actually asked my friends, he was interested in my criticism, and he was not interested. He never responded. So if he listens to this, the main idea that I want to let people know is that Facebook is not, or any of these, social media places, it's not the medium to have these discussions, because you're not dealing with friends. I just want you to know, if you're not aware of this, but if you have, I don't know if it's 100 friends or 4,000 friends, they're not your friends. That's not what a friend is, okay? A friend is a real live human being that you have a relationship with, okay? I'll just tell you another thing about this particular friend. He won't even answer a phone call anymore, only if you text him or you leave some kind of recording. I find that very strange. I know this is the time of Corona, but to actually have a conversation, even on the phone, is better than this texting back and forth or these leaving of messages, these short, I don't know how long you can get, a few minutes, and then you're cut off. What do you think it means when, dituk chaverim, to have real friends? And I'm going to give a few stories of what real friendship is about, because that's going to help us understand. We're talking about the examination of the ideas, but we also have to talk about friendships as well. Now, so the Rosh Hashiva mentions, okay, so we need more facts, right? You're in the middle of a discussion. What's the problem? Get more facts. We need to understand where the other person's coming from. Okay, because I discuss this with my students all the time. We're looking for what we call absolute truth. But will we ever in this world understand completely what absolute truth is? No, but our goal is to still try. So, but know that we're limited. We're only going to get so far. So if I have a group of people, and I use the example, I put a bottle of Coke. It could be an orange juice, doesn't matter. A bottle of some kind of cold drink in the middle of the table. And we're all sitting around, and I say to each one, describe what you see. Now, the truth is that everyone will only describe approximately, 180 degrees of the label and whatever else they see or can imagine that they see, but they cannot see the whole truth. We're all sitting around this table, but can you imagine when we all share what we think we see, each person actually has a better view of this bottle, meaning the 180 degrees they cannot see. And each person is on a different angle. So everyone is getting, I'll say, valuable information. I mean, if we're talking about trying to find out the absolute truth about this bottle. And everyone can share. And by hearing and listening and absorbing, we're getting a better picture. And that's the truth. Now, even though I mentioned about Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, it could be that Shammai really is the absolute truth, but it doesn't matter because God wrote in his own Torah that the truth is going to be determined by the majority of the Sanhedrin. And that's God's rule. And try to imagine this. I know that many people are dealing with the, I forget the word, but basically, man's law or God's law, right? There's a doctrine. Isn't it a doctrine of man? Isn't that what all religion is about? Well, we say no. Our doctrine is a doctrine of God. And yet at the same breath, we say that it's determined by the majority of the Sanhedrin, which are men. Well, guess what? That's what God said. So it really is God's rule and law to go by the majority of the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin is very carefully picked. I mean, we've had problems in the temple with corruption, but I don't know. I've never heard of any corruption that went on in the Sanhedrin. And that was ruled by the Pharisees. Okay.
Wow.
The Sanhedrin, the temple, on the other hand, was paid and bought for quid pro Joe, whatever, by the Sadducees, by the Sadducees. But here you're talking about men of integrity, men of great integrity who are on the Sanhedrin. So one thing, a chaver is someone who you can absolutely trust. And we find in the Oral Torah so much about the integrity of these sages. Basically, the Rosh Shiva concludes, this is like the introduction, that in order to live in reality, we have to be able to master this concept, because we deal with people all the time, and we deal with ideas on the free market system all the time. So definitely do not automatically accept or reject anything, right, that you hear. But rather, when you're involved in your conversation, you should set the tone, make sure the attitude of both people are for the sake of finding the truth, that there's mutual respect, and you're both willing to evaluate the evidence. Evidence is a key word here. Okay, so let me just go through some of the ideas that we have in this book. This is the book that we're using. I encourage people to purchase it online. There's a link, at least on my website anyway. They can look it up. You can find it quite easily. Look, ideas do have consequences, right? People, unfortunately, are killing each other, right? They're fighting. The people's families and lives are being torn apart. You can see what's happening in America right now. So we need to learn to sit down and reason together. That's going to be the main idea. So I just quote, Dikduk Havirim is thoroughly examining ideas with friends is essential for attaining wisdom and living effectively. It means putting your ideas on the marketplace and discussing them with friends and other people you respect and trust. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you haven't learned the lesson yet, Facebook is not the place. If you have a particular, I don't know what they call it, Facebook page, where you have carefully vetted every person that they're your friend, and they're all on the same page, they're all looking for the truth, and they're not out, there's no egos involved in trying to I don't know what they do. They bully people, right? So then maybe you have a chance. I think they're called trolls. And the trolls are not interested in, they're looking for attention and arguments to develop. And I don't understand how people have not learned that lesson, right?
Maladaptive.
Over and over again. It's you go to the Beit Midrash where there's respect. So if you want to create a Beit Midrash, so you have to basically be able to vet people and make sure that this is okay. So what happens? You start arguing, your voices are raised, you get angry, right? The communication starts to break down. So you have to, at some point, calm, what do you call, bring down, calm everyone down, remind everybody we're looking for the truth. It has to be civil. Now, there is a statement in Pirkei Avot. It's in the first chapter. It's number 8. It tells you that you should be a judge and not a lawyer. Because what is a lawyer? A lawyer is someone who's paid to defend a certain point, even if it's not true. I mean, for whatever reason, his goal is, I don't know, every situation is different. But let's just say his goal is to win the point for his client or their client. So what's the judge? The judge hopefully is someone who's able to equally carefully look at the evidence. And if you're afraid, right, you're afraid to look at the evidence, you cannot be a judge. Okay, so it's very important, as it says in Pirkei Avot, that you have to be a judge and not a lawyer. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 19 and 20, you shall not pervert judgment. Now, truth is, even that Pirkei Avot we just quoted, and this verse in Deuteronomy 16, seems like it's talking about a judge. And we're not all judges, but that's not true. We are constantly judging, right? I get in this discussion a lot of times with people who say,
wow,
don't judge. Don't, well, it does say in our tradition that you should judge everybody favorably. So don't tell me we don't judge. The problem is how we judge, right? We're already coming into a situation where we've made a certain, I think they call it like first impressions, right? You've already made certain judgments even before the discussion opened up. How the person's dressed, how the person looks, what you assume his education status is, right? What kind of family background, perhaps. So we're constantly judging. So the question is, how should we judge? We have to judge positively. We have to judge objectively. So as the verse I meant in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 19 through.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, sure. Two verses, 19 and 20.
19, you shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Justice shall you pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you.
Okay, so basically it does say righteousness twice. We'll discuss that in a second. But the first thing, even though it's talking to a judge, but again, we all judge things, do not pervert judgment. So you cannot show favor, don't accept a bribe. Once you accept a bribe, whatever that means. In other words, whether you're a lawyer, because the lawyer is taking money and he's already fully convinced or he's trying to prove one side. But rather be a judge without showing any favor, right? This is like every human being really should accept this, because we judge all the time. Okay, so I think at the end when it says that you will live and possess the land the Lord your God gives you, we're talking about the prize. Like in other words, you'll have a good, healthy life spiritually, right? Well, if you want to think of it in the physical terms, that's fine. But I'm thinking of it in terms of living in the land of Israel, which is the land of truth, the land of clarity. Okay, but that's where I'm coming from. There's another famous statement that Chazal make, and that is, there's no joy like the removal of doubts. So if someone is living in a state of doubt, now it depends how consequential this doubt is, but basically they're not comfortable. There's no joy. There's a lot of discomfort, let's say. So that's one of the main reasons that in the end we have to go with the majority of the Sanhedrin, like in such a case when there's a doubt. Remember, it says when there's a doubt, you go to the highest court and they'll tell you, and whatever they tell you to do, you have to follow them. That's God's rule. That's right. It sounds like it's the doctrine of man, as I mentioned in the beginning, but ultimately it's really the doctrine of God. That's how God wants it in this world. And this world is a world of doubt, a world of sheker, and there's always going to be a mixture. Even science is not conclusive. It is the best guess. When they have evidence, and there are certain laws that they have even said have been proven, and later on they were proven wrong, or they were proven with little tweaks and changes. Okay, so we have to know we're doing the best we can. There's no doubt about it. I'll just read what I wrote here. So there's no joy like the removal of doubts, the sages teach us. When you've been scrupulously honest with yourself, you have to be honest with yourself. This is what I talk about in terms of, I give a shir in Shari Tshuva. in terms of, let's say, recovery programs like 12-step programs, when you've sinned and you need to get back on the right path, if one is not honest with themselves, there's no way that they can overcome and whether find tshuva, find repentance, find any kind of a different way of life, because they're basically like we said earlier, in a state of what was the statement? What was the word I used before? Cognitive dissonance, where they have already believed, hook, line, and sinker, whatever it is that they've decided is the easiest path, and not willing to change their decision. So when you've been scrupulously honest with yourself and the decision-making process, you have to be careful about the decision-making process as well. Mm-hmm. Then all doubts are removed and you experience the most profound joy. And that's the result of your absolute pursuit of righteousness, right? We said righteousness, meaning the truth. That's what you should pursue, of making sure the process of coming to the decision was as straight as could be. Beautiful. Okay. Just to go on, that when you should be the lawyer, you should be the judge and not the lawyer. Okay, he describes it like this. What is the lawyer? The lawyer argues for the side that has hired him. His goal is to win the argument. So don't be like that. You don't need to win an argument. The judge strives to be objective and weigh both sides of the issue so that he can discover the truth. You need to clarify which of the other person's points have merits. Don't think that none of them have merits. I mean, it could be the guy is absolutely crazy, but at least in most of the times that I have, I'll call them arguments, but let's call them discussions, but they usually are with people who are not on the same page as me. I try my best, as what it says here, is first find the points you actually agree on, right? Let's set the tone to give the other person some credit. I mean, this person is going to walk away, at least the way you think, believing like you, right? Because you've examined it carefully by the time you get to this argument. And this person is perhaps less educated or hasn't seen all the evidence. So at least build the other person up. I mean, why tear him apart? There's no way he's going to be open to listen to you. At least start on this. Get to the points that have merits, the points that that you can both agree on, right? And that would bring you further into the discussion. Again, making sure that you're both willing to change your views if there was compelling evidence. And that is like, I don't know how much, that's so important. Okay, so there is a few stories I want to tell. So here's a really great story. As I mentioned, that people learn bichavruta, one with another, right? And this is going way back. So in the Gemara, we have the story about Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Now, how they became chavrusas is a story in and of itself. I want to spend just a few moments just to tell you how they found each other. And that is Reish Lakish he wasn't that religious as far as we know. He was a thief. He lived in the forest, much like, I guess, Robin Hood. Robin Hood is now in the news for some reason. Anyway, so he lived in the trees, and he would find, I guess, what they call caravans or lonely travelers, and he would rob them. He had a gang, and they would rob people. Okay, so basically, he was very strong-willed, and into power. Like Tarzan, okay? Now, what happened was he saw it from a distance. Actually, it was Rabbi Yochanan, but he didn't know it was Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was known to be very pale, white, and fat, very heavy. As we say in Israel, very healthy. Oh, wow, you look very healthy. You're eating well. Anyway, so what happens is he sees him from a distance. He thinks it's a woman, and maybe he had long hair. I have no idea. But he goes into the water. He sees him swimming, goes into the water, and Rabbi Yochanan assumed this guy thought he was a woman. So he says, I see you're into beauty. I know you don't learn Torah. If you would learn Torah, you would commit to learning Torah, I would try my best to have my sister marry you, right? So he made a shidduch. The truth is, Reish Lakish says, yeah, I'm into beauty. If she's the most beautiful girl in the world and you want to offer it to me, of course, I'll sit and learn Torah. So Rabbi Yochanan basically, appealed to a certain side of Reish Lakish, got him to study Torah, and they became study partners. Reish Lakish is one of the greatest rabbis who ever lived because of his transition, of course. So what happens? So after Reish Lakish passes on, Rav Yochanan is depressed. He's looking for a study partner. And who do they get for him? Another great rabbi. And after a bit of time, not very long, people see Rabbi Yochanan very depressed. Rabbi Yochanan, we got you the greatest study partner in the world after Reish Lakish had passed on. Why are you so down? So he says, listen, every time I had an argument with Reish Lakish, I tried to make a point. He came against me with 24 pieces of evidence against what I said. And of course, whatever. I argued back, and he came back with all these answers. But what did you give me? This guy you gave me is like a yes man. He's agreeing with everything I say. Well, that's not giving me vibrancy. It's not giving me life. It's not giving me a sharp mind. This Reish Lakish was my sharpener. I would say something. He came back with 24 problems, right? Whatever I said, there was an issue. It was very nice that you sent me a very brilliant person, but that's not what I'm looking for. So in the Gemara Tainus, it mentions, "O chavrusa, o misusa, give me companionship and study, or give me death." Right? It sounds like some great American hero, right? Give me freedom, or give me maybe liberty. If your whole life is trying to sharpen your mind to get to the truth, at least to the truth of truth that you can possibly get to. You may not get to the ultimate, but your goal is to get there. If you have a yes man, if you have someone who's just agreeing with everything you said, so how's that gonna help you? You're not. There's no challenge to the position, and therefore your clarity is not going to. There's no ladder to be climbing up. You're basically, I guess, at a plateau. You're not moving higher. Everything you say, the person's just agreeing with you. So that's not good. So I think that was a very important story to tell over. Obviously, choosing friends is very difficult, meaning that a real true friend can be quite a challenge in life, because we find that we have so many opportunities to find friends, but we don't really invest. In other words, we find a roommate in college, or we're sitting next to the same person every day on the bus, or even people at work. You go to the, what do they call that thing, the water fountain or the Xerox machine, right?
Coffee talk.
That's not a real investment in a friend. That's not a friend, right? That may be an acquaintance. That may be somebody who you know by on a first-hand basis. But a real friend, and now I want to talk about that. So the Gemara actually it's a medrash actually, tells us a story. And this takes place, but it's famous. Every Jewish kid knows this story. And we're going to hear a story within a story. Okay, so that's a real Hasidic Maisa, real Hasidic story. We have a story, and then we're going to have a story within the story. So apparently 2,000 years ago, during the Roman occupation of Israel, a father, he had a son who was very gregarious. Okay, so the son boasted to the father, and this is before Facebook. He says, "I have 100 friends." So the father says, "Wow, that's fantastic, right? I can't believe that." He says, "Why? How many friends do you have, Dad?" So he says, "Look, my whole life I worked very hard to have a friend. I only have half a friend. How do you have half a friend? I don't know. But half a friend is better than nothing." But anyway, he says, "How can that be, Dad? I know you're like a real popular guy, a real chevraman, as we say in Yiddish, right? You're a wonderful guy. Everyone talks about you, right? How can you have only half a friend? What is half a friend anyway?" So he says to his son, you have to know whether your friends are really your friends, right? A friend in need is a friend indeed. Now, I know that sounds cliche-ish, but we'll hear what it means. So he says, why don't you test your friends to see if they really are your true friends? So the father had an idea, knowing that at least murder, or if you had been caught as a murderer, that the Romans would certainly kill you. Very harsh judgment. So he says, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. Okay? Take a goat, kill a goat, put it in a bag. You got blood all over the bag, and go around to your friends and tell them a story. Okay, he made up a nice story that he got in a fight in a bar, and some guy hit him, and he hit him back to defend himself. And before you know it, he killed the guy by accident. But now he needs to bury the body. Can you help me bury this body? So he went around to his 100 friends with this sack of this dead goat. And what do you think these friends said? Get lost. I'm not going to jail for this. And nobody was interested in helping him. Okay. So basically, the son returned to his father and says, Dad, you're right. My friends are not really good friends at all. Well, what about your half friend? Maybe he'll help me. So he says, good idea. Why don't you go ask him? You just tell him that you're Chaim's son. So he went to the friend and he explained what happened. So he knocks on the door. He says, who's there? He just says it's Chaim's son. So he says, oh, you're Chaim's son. Come on in. So the son told the father's friend everything that happened with the bar fight and having to defend himself and kill the guy. And he's got this bag with the goat. Well, he didn't know it was a goat, but he saw the bloody bag. And the kid says, I need help to bury him. So the father's friend says, I really shouldn't help you, but what can I do? You're Chaim's son. So he goes and he helps him. Very nice. So the son went home and he told his dad, I don't understand why you call him only half a friend. He's the only one that helped me. So he says, what did he say to you? He says, really, I shouldn't help you, but since you're Chaim's son, what can I do? So the father says that's why he's only half a friend, because he said, I really shouldn't be doing this. So the son says, well, Dad, then what's a real friend? And now this is the story within the story, right? He says, I'm going to tell you what a real friend is. And there's another famous story, right? Because it's part of the same story. So during the Roman Empire, right, there were two Jewish boys that grew up in the land of Israel. They became very close friends. One moved to the area of Syria. The other one still lived in the area of Israel. They were both under, one was under Roman control. In Syria was under Syrian control. And the one from Israel went off to visit his friend in Syria. And when he was there was a conspiracy, right? Somebody claimed that this guy was a spy. So he was convicted of spying on the Syrian Empire, and he was sentenced to death. So before he was being executed, he was about to be executed, he asked, look, they said, do you have any last requests? He says, yeah, I really would like to set all my affairs in order, allow me to go to Rome and to deal with everything I need to deal with over there. So the emperor, the chief guy, laughed. He says, what are you, crazy? You're not going to come back. Is there anything collateral you can give me that I know you'll come back? He says, yeah, I have a friend who lives in Syria, the area. If I don't come back, you can kill him. So the emperor says, what, are you kidding me? I'd like to see this guy go ahead and say, yeah, you can kill me. So that's exactly what happened. So the Syrian friend who said, yeah, sure, I'll take my friend's place and be killed if he doesn't return. So the emperor was intrigued by this. It's incredible. Okay, so I'll give you 60 days. 60 days, you come back. Of course, you know what happens. He only comes back on the 61st day, first thing in the morning. I mean, with his luck, he to take a boat, you have to rely on the wind. And it wasn't there was enough wind to get him back on time. But he raced back, and he's standing there as they're leading out his Syrian friend to be executed. And he screams, no, don't kill him, kill me. And the Syrian friend says, no, you came late, I committed, you got to kill me. And they're arguing back and forth. This really got the emperor, freaked out. He says, one second. This is amazing. It's amazing. You guys are willing to die for each other. I'm going to let you both go on condition that I can be. I feel like crying every time I tell this story. I the emperor says, I'll let you free on condition I can be your third friend. I would like a friend like this. This is real friendship. And the Rosh Shiva ends this story by telling us that this is actually written in the Torah in Leviticus 19:18, right? It says, love your neighbor as yourself, for I am the Lord your God. God wants you to love your neighbor, and he himself is the third partner, okay? So that is a real friend. That's complete loyalty.
Just beautiful.
What else can I say? There's a few other points. This idea, I just want to mention, this idea is so important about these conspiracy theories. It intrigues me that I think that, how do I even say it that people will understand? I know that today there are, let's say, anti-vaxxers, right? They whatever is not popular, right? There's something behind it. I don't really, I don't care. Hopefully we won't get censored because of this, right? Every time you hear any of these conspiracy theories, there's a little bit of some kind of truth, or it would never take off. Our job is to sift through it, get rid of the waste, and find out that truth, and at least examine it, right? I did want to bring up a possible story that, no, so I don't have any notes here, but let me just wing it, okay? Like, for example, I know this could get us in trouble, right? If people believe that, let me just say it like this. Every time you have an election in the United States, because it's a democracy, there's always somebody who's trying to get over the system and vote twice or vote for someone, a dead relative or something like that. The question is, how many, how organized, and all that, right? So there's a word. It starts with an F, right? And the next letter is an R, right? You can't even say it. The problem is that the censorship, the fact that there are people who are not willing to allow these ideas to enter the free market, creates more conspiracy theories.
100%.
That's what I'm going to say. That's really my point here. That even these friends of mine that have created this Facebook group that are trying to end these conspiracy theories have basically taken a side of censorship, of anybody that doesn't agree with them, who only has one of these external views from what they claim to be the truth, should not be allowed to be heard. And the problem is that within these conspiracy theories, there is a little bit of truth. And that is where we need to examine, and to at least to let these people know. The way that you can win them over is to hear their idea, agree with that 1% of truth, maybe even more. It could be even 60, 80% of truth. Who knows? But at least agree on, see the evidence, agree, but doesn't mean that evidence means that their conspiracy theory is widespread, blown through true. That's it's most likely not the case. But these are human beings just like you. And the only question is, are they looking for the truth? And as long as they themselves say, if you show me the evidence, I would change my mind. You have to be willing the same way. So then go for it. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I hope we don't get in trouble. I hope we gave it over in a good way. And I just want to stress these social media platforms are they're not the venue. They're not the venue
for friends.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, look,
connection, maybe.
You make a private message, right? I see things that I don't like, and right away I private message a person. There's no reason for me on Facebook to enter a discussion. Way down. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get bitter. It's going to get like it's going to bring the worst out of people. So because those, you don't know who these people are, but hopefully you know who your friends are, and you can remind your friend in person, we're trying to get to the truth. Let's see the evidence. Let's talk with respect. And if you're constantly able to remind them and bring the tone down when it gets a little excited, there's no reason why you can't engage in that fashion. Okay, so now we'll leave it for there tonight. Yeah. You have any questions or comments?
Well, Rabbi, yeah, I just wanted to say, especially since this pandemic started, I mean, we've saw in my country, we've seen there was one care home where one of the first outbreaks happened, and believe it or not, one person incited with a rumor and a lie about the pandemic and called in, and the staff got confused and were in disarray, and we know it was coming from outside countries. And this is way back when it first started. The point of the matter is that the person that made the false accusation or allegation ended up inevitably getting charged with a crime, and the crime had to do with false representation that actually caused harm. And I'm not citing the exact charge at the moment, but when you're talking about on Facebook, a lot of people are just out there to be derogatory, to be, like you mentioned, trolls. It's maladaptive to a level that doesn't pursue that golden nugget of truth. And since getting to meet you, we've done numerous broadcasts together. One thing that I've gotten from your teaching, sir, and you know me, I've always been very, very in your face, confrontational. I love how you said today, don't shred somebody apart. Understand that it's about coming together to get to that golden nugget of truth. And, my life has been a lot of, I don't know, I could say a lot of contrary. And so maybe I developed a pattern that just, you get your fur up, you get your back up, and it's so needless. And I want to thank you for sharing the peace of Torah, and the clarity that, hey, keep the focus on the prize. Let's come together and look for that nugget of truth. Thank you. That's beautiful the way you said it. So if we're going to wind this down for today, have you got any final closing words? And Hashem willing, are we on for next week, Rabbi?
We're definitely on for next week, Bezrat Hashem. Look, there are prayers the Jews say before they enter the base medrash, that they shouldn't, make a mistake, and they shouldn't cause other people to make mistakes. They're looking for the truth. There's quite a few things we could still talk about. Let me, do I have a copy here? No, I don't, but it's so important that if we want to live by the truth, we're talking about life or death, even for our own soul. But how responsible are we when we're only guessing? So better not to guess. Like, one of the things the rabbis told is you have to say you don't know when you don't know. And right. I'll get back to you. Examine the evidence. So this is life or death. To be able to say, I don't know. I'm not trying to convince you of something that I am not so sure about myself. I'm sure that many people would be uncomfortable if they invested so much. But that's the truth. You want to be honest. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with everything. And if you don't know, you have to say, I don't know, but I will examine. How hard is it? How uncomfortable? It's, what's the big deal? I don't know. I will get back to you. I could tell you what I think at the moment. I'll get back to you and after I do some more examination. What's the problem?
Rabbi, the older I get now that I'm in my 50s, occasionally I've got to wear reading glasses, especially with fine print. I've got to put them on. If I don't put them on, I don't have the clarity. And I think what you're saying is just like, hey, think about it, step back, get the information, get some clarity, dispel the confusion.
So let me just mention, because we are about to reach, Purim is coming up in about 3 weeks. So Amalek, which represents our arch enemy, so to speak, their gematria, the value of the name Amalek, is the same as doubt, Safek. The Jews who traveled and didn't stay together as the group, the ones who were weak,
Stragglers.
stragglers, they were the ones that were attacked by Amalek.
Picked
They were the
off.
ones that were attacked by doubt. And doubt is, so remember, we said that there's no joy like getting out of doubt. Whatever it means in science to get to a point where you're at least as sure as you possibly can be, right? Any decision you're about to make. So, as we say, shave velotase, sit and do nothing when you're in doubt. If you're in doubt, it's best not to take action. Then you can confer with people who are smarter, more experienced, people you can trust. At least for now, as long as it's not life or death, decisions.
Pray about it. Meditate on it. Get to the bottom of the matter. Yeah, beautiful. It brings peace to the soul, and I think what you've really pulled out is really the core of the friendship. I love that narrative you shared today. That story. No, don't take my friend on the 61st day. No, I gave my. Wow. That there's such profound depth there, and thank you for all you share. I know it's late in Jerusalem. It's now Sunday in Jerusalem. We're still in Saturday afternoon where I'm at, and my day's still got a long way, and I appreciate you taking the time. This class is beautiful. Beyond the 7, sharing the 48 ways. This is part 11. So Hashem willing, we're going to do part 12 next week, Rabbi?
Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat Hashem. So, folks, till then, we're going to sign off. And thank you, everybody, for joining us all around the planet and those that will be listening in the future. Till next week, we'll see you then.